Hi, my name is Nancy Love, and here's another installment on the NK Ultra Love uh, science fiction story that I'm telling you online that I intend, and it's all copyrighted, so don't bother trying to steal it from me because I'm going to produce it into books and movies myself. Um, it's called Return to Innocence, Game Over. The reason I'm making some of this storyline and character development public is because it's extremely important that this information get out because some of it is so close to some people's real life that it's really important that they need to start thinking about what they've become. I've had people say, "You are so brave." I've had cops say, police officers say, "Wow, I'm surprised they're not really messing with you for doing stuff like that online." And I've had people cry on me and say that they've been in some contexts that are similar to this science fiction stuff I'm talking about. Return to innocence, game over. I had one dear old friend who used to be a wonderful creative genius and is now a corrupt middle-aged bitter old fool say he literally cried and said he wished to God he could find his innocence again, but he never will, because his value system is as corrupt as his behavior. Uh, there's basically two things I want to say about Return to Innocence Game Over. NKULTRALove is our hero. She is doing most of this retroactively, looking back and flashbacks of her life. She's in her 60s, but she had a very storied life and was born and raised at a military intelligence base, national security agency attached, had a top secret security clearance by the time she was 14. Actually, was above top secret. I think Ultra Umbra is what we'll give her. And once she gets a chance, unique privilege and great honor of talking to a U.S. president who says, "Why is your security clearance, you're a lifelong civilian, why is it higher than mine?" She tries to explain. But MK Ultra is a hero because she's so intelligent and passionate and righteous and spiritual that she refuses to get brought in. She refuses to get brought in to a system of corruption in which virtually everyone is owned and controlled by the New World Order, right? And people at all walks of life in many different professions, people who have no profession and live on the street, everything from judges to attorneys to medical doctors to district attorneys to, police officers, FBI agents, presidents, congressmen, senators, governors, and teachers, and everybody in between. Pretty much gets brought into a system in which they're controlled and they're threatened. And if they respond favorably to the threats by doing some awful things that most of them never, ever, ever would have done in their own, of their own volition, they wouldn't have become corrupt criminal types. They would have just been basically well meaning good people. If left to their own devices and not living on this, science fiction contextual planet in which, or probable timeline, alternate probable timeline, in which this sort of thing has happened to them. So it's really very sad, and everybody is living in an invisible prison in which they feel threatened and controlled, and some are rewarded. Keep in mind the ways of controlling usually involve both threats and rewards. So if they respond appropriately to threats, they're rewarded with wealth, fame, power, whatever. And that's stupid, because who the hell would want to be a slave, criminalized by threats? Who would want rewards for that reason? Hello. Duh. So it's a sad world. It's a mad, bad world in old NK Ultra Love's context. And she's one of the only people who refuses to be brought in. And she's tortured a lot. And there are people who think she's so brave and they love her so much that they shake the walls of their invisible prison and they rail against the bars of their invisible prison and they break the chains of their slavery because they see one person in that world who won't become a slave the way they are. And they love her so much and they admire her courage so much that they find a way to free themselves. Initially, she sees herself as responsible for trying to free them, but ultimately, she realizes that it's way too big a job and she can't free people who are cowering in fear and also, lapping the milk of their unjust rewards. So she at some point says, "You bleeps need to free yourselves. I'm tired of talking to you about righteousness and glory and freedom and dignity and, arbitrary, bizarre concepts like your own freedom and life and integrity, right?" She also talks about their immortal souls and how everybody makes it out of life alive, and that there is an eternal evolution that is going to depend on who and what they become and what they allow themselves to be. And at some point, she tells some of these people they'd be better off dead than to have become what they've become. They would be better off dead than to have become what they've become. So, NK Ultra, our fictional hero, has two bits of advice that she tries to get out, and there is something called the resistance. She's a resistance leader, but there are others, and other people find their courage and find their freedom and break their chains, and the movement grows. And just like so many contexts in real history, we see that a handful of people do change the world. They start a process by which dominoes fall and pillars fall and archetypes crumble, and it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to have courage and refuse the bondage of slavery. So, she says the way to free yourself from the game is to stop playing. The game involves people asking, unscrupulous, expletive deleted, called willful perpetuators. Willful perpetuators of slavery will ask protection questions that people will have to, say, choose between their brother or their sister, their lives, or their car or their house, or people will have to say, they'll give up drinking beer to save their life, or they'll have to give up something to save their life. Some people are asked to give their own life to save their offspring's life. And it goes on and on from there. And you can see how unnatural and unholy these questions are. They aren't natural questions. If there's a Titanic like yacht sinking and there's a limited space on a rowboat, it might be a natural sacrifice to say, well, I'll stick my daughter or son in the boat and I'll risk drowning. Uh, and that's a natural kind of situation where you see the value and beauty and the holy love of making some kind of offering of that nature. But to just be asked arbitrarily to torture you by a willful perpetuator, to make an arbitrary sacrifice, the Sophie's choice kind of thing, is unholy, is unnatural, it is unjust, and it gets undone. because NKULTRALove and her associates end the game, first in their lifetimes and over the course of a number of years in the world. They help free all the slaves because they won't accept the bondage of slavery in their own life. They just won't. Yeah, think. So the way people, number one, the way people stop, you know, being slaves is they stop answering protection questions, and they call it unanimity. And in unanimity, in the resistance, you just refuse to answer. And maybe initially people are tortured for that, but ultimately the willful perpetuators start seeing that the species has evolved. And incidentally, the willful perpetuators in this sci-fi context are extraterrestrials who infected everybody with nanobots and have these, city-sized computers that they're running the world from. And when enough people, only 10% of the people finally rise to the calling of their own freedom, and they stop playing the game, the willful perpetuators, the ETs, see that the species has evolved to the point where they deign to not torture it this way anymore. It's no fun. It's no fun to torture a species that fights against the slavery of the game. So they give up, they bless humanity, and go away. The second thing, and this is extremely important, is that people in the resistance stop breeding because it is unholy and it is unnatural to breed in a prison. It is unholy and it is unnatural to generate slaves. Babies and children are loved in the resistance, but babies and children only happen among resistance couples by accident. And accidents do happen, and they get names and they get loved. But nobody in the resistance breeds on purpose because it is unholy and it is unnatural and it is completely immoral to generate slaves. Mothers and fathers who do that on purpose are called willful perpetuators or the ultimate recruiters. You don't want to be an ultimate recruiter. Nobody can be victimized into a system of slavery if the slaves stop generating new slaves, right? But the willful perpetuators have kind of designed into the system an increase in status if you breed new victims for them. So people who breed new victims for them are called on the breeder grid, and they get various types of rewards. So the thing is, you stop playing the game at all, ever. You don't answer protection questions because you don't want to be unnatural and unholy and immoral. And you stop breeding in captivity because you don't need or want the status of being the ultimate recruiter and generating victims to hand to torturers. What are you, Lebensborn? No. Nobody breeds on purpose if they want to fight the game. This is Nancy Love. Some people call me one of the bravest people on earth. More later. I'm just getting started here. And perhaps so are you.